Seeing as how my channel has taken a strong turn toward Nintendo coverage in recent months, and there's been some degree of interest in my What I Really Think Of line of videos, I figured it was a good time to mesh those two ideas together and give my more detailed thoughts on the Switch itself. In its 7th year on the market, the Switch is astonishingly divisive for a console that has sold over 100 million units. Despite console life cycles getting longer and longer industry-wide, there's a growing sentiment that the Switch has overstayed its welcome, even when major releases still come along once or twice a year and sell in extremely high quantities. Granted, legitimate criticisms persist about Nintendo's rather prickly relationship with many corners of the user end, and the debatable value proposition of Nintendo Switch Online, but by and large I feel they're in the best place they've been in since the early to mid 1990s. By the same token, I can see how it's not a system for everybody. The biggest criticism about it today is its performance, and yeah, if you tend to favor the big AAA market and really lean heavy toward that cinematic 4K type of gaming experience, you're probably not thrilled by Nintendo's long-term market strategy of staying out of the hardware arms race and taking a completely software-driven approach to operating their platform. Of course, I'm so far removed from that mentality that it always feels really wild to me whenever I encounter it. I was quite late to the party in terms of becoming a quote-unquote true believer in the Switch. Like most systems, I picked mine up on launch day, but until late 2022, my library of physical games remained in the single digits, and I wasn't picking anything up on it that I could get on other platforms. This was largely because I hadn't yet processed what Nintendo was bringing to the console market with the system. A long time ago, probably around 2008 or 2009, I was discussing with some friends how jaded I had become about hardware longevity and the failure rates of consoles as they became more and more reliant on moving parts like disk drives, hard drives, cooling fans, and so on, that will just inevitably wear out after years of usage. The platforms of 3rd and 4th gen had long been left behind in terms of technological advancement, but not in durability, and I came to the conclusion that I would be extremely interested in something like a premium-priced console made from parts of a high enough quality that long-term performance was guaranteed, or a console that sacrificed considerable hardware power for more durable parts that carried a similar assurance of standing the test of time. Back around New Year's, I offloaded the vast majority of my games, placing an emphasis on rebuilding my long-term library primarily around post-compatibility line stuff, or platforms and games that otherwise carried some inherent long-term assurances. This is when I really became aware that the Switch was exactly the system I had been waiting for, and completely changed my perspective of it. Don't get me wrong, I always liked that it was cartridge-based and was likely to be low maintenance in the long term, with the only part that might ever need replacing being a very replaceable cooling fan. But this is where I really examined the long-term value proposition of the Switch, which turned it into my main console after years of that status being dominated by the PlayStation line of systems. You can actually see this shift in my content as my tone toward the Switch really changes on a dime, and I rather quickly go from not believing Nintendo will ever cross a compatibility line at all to being absolutely convinced that they will be forced to create one with the Switch as the foundation. The Switch library is truly remarkable. Not only is it rife with exclusives at a time when I've often complained about PlayStation and Xbox not doing nearly enough to distinguish their libraries from one another, but look at what's in it! Games across all generations of the industry, many of which are landing on a cartridge for the very first time, many of which are seeing an English language release for the very first time, to go right alongside Nintendo's best first-party output since arguably the Super NES. The JRPGs are flowing like the Nile, with not only the output of modern top-tier studios like Monolith, Falcom, and Asano Studio cranking out the content, but also much of the best of 4th and 5th gen, where the genre really hit its stride among the available offerings. These are reasons I was able to so enthusiastically make a top 10 needed Switch ports and remasters list a while back. I could actually make it believing that these games were all entirely possible, because it's just in the Switch's nature to gather up games like them. Moreover, because of its extreme low profile compared to its contemporaries, it doesn't take up a lot of space in my entertainment center, assuring that it will have a place there long term, unlike the current massive and unsightly PlayStation and Xbox iterations. All of these elements make the Switch a very compelling long-term investment for me, which is why my physical Switch library currently stands at 96 games, and will hit the century mark within the next few weeks. I don't look at this as a few years journey, this is a library I'm going to be coming back to for the rest of my life. That's what I'm looking for right now as a gamer. In actuality, I have a pretty dismal view of the game industry as a whole. The day will inevitably come when it pisses me off to such a degree that I can no longer justify giving it my money, but I don't see that as any reason to stop gaming altogether. Rather, when that day comes, the Switch library will be a central part of what I have to fall back on, putting it in the company of the evergreen gaming PC or a modded PlayStation TV, for example. I really can understand why people are frustrated by Nintendo's approach to hardware and willingness to hang back a generation or so to stay out of the arms race, but to me the trade-offs are more than worth it, and I'm happy that a platform holder is finally stepping up to fill that niche in the market, whether or not they are fully aware that's what they're doing. These types of options should always be available. Good on Nintendo for providing it, and hopefully they continue to do so for generations generations to come. This is why the upcoming generational shift with a potential Switch 2 is so intriguing, if not nerve-wracking. Nintendo has an extremely spotty track record with generational transitions, but with the Switch having a software attach rate of more than 8, they must have some semblance of sanity regarding what they can and can't do here. To put it simply, any new hardware that does not include 100% backward compatibility with the current Switch would be an unmitigated disaster. There's a huge difference between my feelings about Nintendo and my feelings about the Switch. If the next system is a Switch, I'm on board automatically. If it's just a Nintendo system that is not a Switch, yeah, no thanks. Hopefully those concerns are neither here nor there, and the Switch 2 really is just a Switch 2, with a battery of quality of life enhancements like a write section on game cartridges for patches and DLC, much larger onboard storage, and the ability to flex the next-gen hardware on current Switch titles. If the Switch to Switch 2 is anything like the PlayStation to PlayStation 2, there are good times ahead, friends. That's all for now. If you like this video, then please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, as it all helps grow the channel. Click the notification bell to know right away when the next video comes down. I'm Patrick Mifflin, sounding off.